The pay stub sat on my desk like evidence at a crime scene. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. $472 short. Not a small mistake. Not something you miss by accident. Through the glass wall of his office, Mark Talbot leaned back in his leather chair, laughing. Into his speakerphone. His voice carried across the bullpen. The suite overlooking the lake? Perfect. She'll love it. I walked to HR with the stub in my hand. My supervisor, Patricia, barely looked up from her screen. It's a temporary adjustment, she said. Departmental expenses. Which department? I can't discuss specifics. Her tone was final, dismissive. I returned to my desk. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From something sharper. Colder. I'd worked 60-hour weeks for 3 months straight. I'd missed my sister's wedding to finish Mark's presentation. I'd absorbed criticism meant for him and watched at him claim my ideas in meetings. And now my paycheck was funding whatever he was laughing about on that call. That's when I learned my hard work was funding his affair. My name is Anna Walker, and I used to believe loyalty mattered in the workplace. I joined the Chicago marketing firm 18 months earlier, fresh from my bachelor's degree and eager to prove myself. The company was mid-sized, respectable, the kind of place where people stayed for decades. Mark was the senior director of client relations, charming and ambitious, with a corner office and a reputation for spotting talent. He'd hired me personally after a single interview. You're exactly what this team needs, he'd said. Someone hungry. I was hungry. Hungry to learn, to climb, to make something of myself. My parents had worked factory jobs their entire lives to put me through college. I wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Mark seemed like the perfect mentor at first. He invited me to client meetings, explained strategy, praised my work ethic. You remind me of myself at your age, he'd say. I didn't see the manipulation then. I thought I was lucky. Mark had a way of making everyone feel chosen. In team meetings, he'd speak passionately about company culture, about being a family. We take care of each other here, he'd say, his hand on someone's shoulder, his smile warm and genuine. The entire office adored him. He remembered birthdays, asked about kids, stayed late to help struggling team members. When his assistant got engaged, he organized a surprise party in the conference room with champagne and cake. But there were small things I noticed even then. The way he'd stand too close when reviewing my work. How he'd text me at odd hours with urgent questions that could have waited. The compliments that felt slightly too personal. You look nice today, Anna. That color suits you. I told myself I was being paranoid. This was just how friendly bosses acted, wasn't it? He won my trust by making me feel seen, valued, essential. By the time I realized what he was doing, the boundaries were already gone. 6 months in, my workload tripled. Mark's assistant quit, and instead of hiring a replacement, he temporarily assigned her duties to me. Then, our junior account manager left, and I absorbed his projects too. You're so capable, Mark would say. I can't trust anyone else with this. I arrived at 7 in the morning and left at 9 at night. I ate lunch at my desk if I ate at all. My friends stopped inviting me out. My apartment became just a place to sleep between shifts. In meetings with executives, Mark presented my campaign strategies as his own. I developed this approach, he'd say, clicking through slides I'd stayed up all night creating. He'd throw me a brief glance. Anna helped with some of the research. Helped with research. When I tried to speak up once, to clarify my role, he cut me off smoothly. Let's stay focused on the big picture here. Later, he pulled me aside. You're still learning, Anna. When you have more experience, you'll get your moment. I swallowed my frustration and kept working. The morning I discovered the pay cut, I went back to Patricia in HR. She was eating yogurt at her desk, scrolling through her phone. I need to understand why my pay was reduced, I said, keeping my voice steady. She sighed like I was being difficult. As I explained, it's a temporary departmental adjustment. All non-essential expenses are being reviewed. My salary isn't an expense. It's compensation for work performed. The decision came from senior management. If you have concerns, take them up with your direct supervisor. Mark. She was telling me to ask Mark why he'd cut my pay. I started to leave, then stopped. Can I at least see the budget allocation? Just to understand where the adjustment went. Patricia's expression shifted slightly. Not quite sympathy, but something close. She glanced at the door, then lowered her voice. Anna, if I were you, I'd check the company card statements. Expense reports. Sometimes numbers tell better stories than people do. Then she went back to her yogurt. I walked out slowly, her words echoing in my head. I stayed late that night, waiting until the office emptied. The cleaning crew arrived at 8, pushing their carts through the aisles. I pretended to be working head down until they moved to the upper floors. The printer room was quiet. I knew Mark printed his monthly expense reports there, away from the main copier, where everyone could see. He was paranoid about privacy, about people knowing his business. I found it on the third shelf, behind a box of printer paper. A thick stack of receipts and statements, printed but never filed. My heart pounded as I flipped through them. Hotel charges. 4 nights at the Meridian Grand, charged to the company card. Wine bar. $260. Another hotel, this one in Milwaukee. Restaurant bills for 2. Always 2, with expensive wine and desserts. Then I saw it. One charge coded directly to my department's budget. A weekend stay, nearly $2,000, listed under client entertainment. My stomach dropped. My missing $472. It was all connected. I took photos with my phone, hands shaking so badly the first few came out blurred. The woman's name appeared on multiple receipts: Vanessa Grant. A client contact from a tech startup we'd courted for months. I remembered her from meetings, stylish and confident, laughing at Mark's jokes a little too enthusiastically. They were supposed to be networking lunches. Professional relationship building. I scrolled through my phone's photo gallery, zooming in on the charges. Romantic. Restaurants. Late-night hotel bars. A jewelry purchase for $300, coded as a corporate gift. I thought about Mark's wife. I'd met her once at a company holiday party. Lauren Talbot, elegant and warm, talking about their daughter's college applications and their plans to renovate their kitchen. She'd asked about my family, genuinely interested, while Mark worked the room nearby. I felt sick. This wasn't just about my paycheck anymore. This was about every person Mark had lied to, every boundary he'd crossed, every rule he thought didn't apply to him. I saved every photo to a secure folder. I didn't know why yet. I just knew I couldn't let it go. 2 days later, I requested a meeting with Mark. He made me wait 40 minutes outside his office while he took calls, laughing and gesturing through the glass. When I finally sat down across from him, he didn't look up from his computer. Make it quick, Anna. I've got client calls all afternoon. My pay was cut last week. I need to understand why. Budgets are tight. Everyone's making sacrifices. Everyone? Or just me? He finally looked at me, his expression hardening. You're lucky to even have this job, Anna. Do you know how many people would kill for this opportunity? The exposure you're getting. The experience? The exposure doesn't pay my rent. His smile was thin, dangerous. Then maybe you should be more grateful. Don't start getting entitled. That's not a good look. The humiliation burned through me like acid. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. Thank you for your time. As I left, I heard him laugh. Actually laugh. That sound followed me all the way back to my desk. I didn't quit. Everyone expected me to. I could feel the pity from coworkers who'd overheard the conversation, who'd seen me walk out of Mark's office with my face flushed. Instead, I stayed. And I started gathering evidence. I documented everything. Screenshots of emails where Mark took credit for my work. Copies of project files with my name on them, presented in meetings as his initiatives. Records of my hours, my contributions, my ideas that became his victories. I didn't know what I'd do with it. I had no plan, no endgame. I just needed to hold something real, Something that proved I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't normal, that I deserved better than this. Late at night, alone at my desk, I'd add to the file. Each piece of evidence felt like taking back a small piece of myself. My sister called one evening. "You sound exhausted." "What's going on?" "Nothing. Just work." "Anna, you missed my wedding. You've missed everything lately. Is it really worth it?" I didn't have an answer for her. 3 weeks after the pay cut, Mark started undermining me publicly. In team meetings, he'd question my judgment, correct minor details, talk over me when I presented updates. "Anna, I'm not sure that approach is sophisticated enough for this client," he'd say, his tone patient but condescending. "Let me explain how we should really handle it." Coworkers stopped asking my opinion. They'd glance at Mark first, waiting for his approval. Before engaging with my ideas, I became invisible even when standing at the front of the room. Then the rumors started. I heard them through carefully neutral conversations, through sudden silences when I entered rooms. "She's been unstable lately. Emotional. Maybe the pressure's too much." My hours were cut without explanation. Projects I'd led for months were reassigned. I watched my career disintegrate in slow motion while Mark smiled sympathetically and told people he was concerned about my well-being. The same week, Vanessa Grant got hired as a special consultant to the firm. Her office was 3 doors down from Mark's. I resigned on a Friday afternoon. Quietly.
No dramatic exit.
I just put my letter on Patricia's desk and walked out. Mark never said goodbye. I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes from my desk. Coffee mugs with company logos. Framed certificates from training programs. A stress ball shaped like a light bulb that Mark had given me during my first week. "For bright ideas," he'd said. I threw it in the trash. My laptop was open to job listings, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about that moment in Mark's office, the casual cruelty in his voice. "You're lucky to even have this job." I pulled out an old notebook from college, pages worn and coffee-stained. On the inside cover, in my younger handwriting, I'd written, "Apply to law school someday." I'd always wanted to be a lawyer, but it seemed impractical, expensive, impossible while working full-time and paying off student loans. I'd convinced myself marketing was the smarter choice, the safer path. Safe had gotten me here. Broken, broke, and angry. I opened my laptop and pulled up law school applications. That night, grief became purpose. Law school was brutal. I'd imagined it would be challenging, but I hadn't anticipated the sheer exhaustion of working part-time while studying full-time, of memorizing case law until 2 a.m. and serving coffee at 6. I worked at a cafe near campus, making lattes for undergraduates who complained about their workload. I wanted to tell them they had no idea what hard actually meant. My classmates had financial support from parents, from spouses, from trust funds. They studied in coffee shops, traveled during breaks, went out for expensive dinners. I ate ramen in my studio apartment and calculated whether I could afford new shoes or hadi to make the torn ones last another month. But I didn't quit. Every time I wanted to, I thought about Mark's face, his dismissive smile, the way he'd made me feel worthless. That memory became fuel. It pushed me through constitutional law at midnight, through practice exams I failed the first time, through humiliating moments when professors called on me and I froze, unprepared. I passed. Not brilliantly, not at the top of my class, but I passed. 3 years later, I took the bar exam. I remember sitting in that testing room, hundreds of us, in neat rows, all chasing the same impossible dream. I waited 8 weeks for results. When I saw my name on the pass list, I cried in the parking lot of the library where I'd spent countless hours studying.
No applause. No fanfare.
Just me and the quiet knowledge that I'd changed. The small victory of passing the bar was followed by the harsh reality of finding work.
Big
firms wanted top-tier graduates with connections. I had neither. I interviewed at 12 places. Most didn't call back. 2 offered positions that paid barely more than my cafe job. One partner looked at my resume and said, "You're older than our typical hires. What took you so long to pursue law?" I wanted to tell him about Mark, about working full-time through school, about choosing courage over comfort. Instead, I smiled and thanked him for his time. The 13th interview was at a modest family law practice in a converted brownstone.
The
Senior partner, Victoria Hayes, was in her 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. She asked about my background. I told her the truth. All of it. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Financial transparency cases. Hidden assets, manipulated accounts. Would you be interested in specializing in that?" "Yes," I said immediately. "Very interested." She hired me that afternoon. I spent 2 years at Victoria's firm learning the intricacies of divorce law.
how people hide.
Money in offshore accounts, in business partnerships, in their children's names. How abuse isn't always physical. How power imbalances destroy trust slowly, then all at once. I was drawn to cases where one spouse controlled all the finances, where the other person had no idea what they owned or owed, where confusion was weaponized. I helped a woman discover her husband had 3 bank accounts she'd never seen. Helped another find out her name was on business debts she hadn't signed for. Each case felt personal, like solving a version of my own story. Victoria noticed my intensity. "You're good at this," she said one afternoon, reviewing my case notes. "But don't let it consume you. This work will eat you alive if you're not careful."
I'm careful, he replied.
She didn't look convinced. One Thursday morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hayes and Associates. This is Anna Walker.
E.
I need help." The woman's voice was shaky, uncertain. "My husband's been unfaithful. I think he's hiding money from me. I don't know where to start." "That's what we're here for," I said gently. "Why don't we schedule a consultation?"
Can I get
"Your name?" There was a pause. Then, "Lauren Talbot." The room tilted. My hand tightened around the phone. "Mrs. Talbot?
Yes.
Do you have availability this week?" I pulled up my calendar with shaking fingers. "How about tomorrow afternoon?" After she hung up, I sat frozen at my desk. The name echoed in my head. It couldn't be. It was too unlikely, too perfectly cruel. But I knew. Somehow I knew. Mark Talbot's wife had just hired me to destroy him. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying that holiday party, Lauren in her elegant dress, talking about their daughter, about family plans. She'd been so warm, so genuine. I thought about calling her back, referring her to another attorney. This was too close, too complicated. Any reasonable person would step away. But I wasn't feeling reasonable. I was feeling something darker, sharper. Something that had been building for years. The next afternoon, Lauren Talbot walked into my office. She looked older than I, remembered, tired around the eyes. But she carried herself with dignity, sitting gracefully in the chair across from my desk. "Thank you for seeing me on short notice," she said. "Of course. Tell me what's brought you here." She took a breath. "My husband, Mark, has been unfaithful. I've known for a while, but I stayed. We have a daughter finishing college, and I thought we could work through it." Her voice cracked slightly. "But last month I discovered he's been using our money to support this relationship. Hotel rooms, gifts, trips, all on our credit cards, hidden in business expenses." I kept my expression neutral, professional. "Have you confronted him?" He denied it. Said I was being paranoid, jealous for no reason. He made me feel crazy. She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "But I'm not crazy. I found the receipts." "Do you still have them?"
Yes.
"Everything." I pulled out an intake form. "Mrs. Talbot, I need to be transparent with you. Years ago, I worked for your husband. Briefly. There's no legal conflict, but I want you to know." Her eyebrows rose. "You worked for Mark?"
At his firm, yes.
"It was a long time ago." She was quiet, processing. Then she nodded slowly. Did he treat you well? The question caught me off guard. I could have lied, maintained professional distance. Instead, I heard myself say, no.
He didn't.
Something passed between us then. Understanding. Solidarity. Then you know, she said simply. You know what he's like.
Ido.
Will you help me? I met her eyes.
Yes.
I will. We prepared carefully. Lauren brought in years of financial records, credit card statements, emails. She'd been documenting everything since she first suspected the affair, organized and meticulous. I used to work in accounting, she explained, before our daughter was born. Mark convinced me to stay home, said it made more sense financially. She smiled bitterly. I gave up my career. He gave up nothing. I reviewed the evidence methodically. The paper trail was damning. Mark had been sloppy, arrogant, certain he'd never be caught. Hotel charges, expensive dinners, jewelry purchases. All categorized as business expenses, many coded to his department budget. My old department budget. This amount here, I said, pointing to a highlighted charge. 470-2.
$.
Does that mean anything to you? Lauren shook her head. Should it? That's what he cut from my pay to help cover his expenses. The admission came out flat, emotionless. When I worked for him, my paycheck was reduced. He told me it was temporary. I found out later he was using department funds for his affair. Lauren's face went pale. He stole from you to pay for this. Technically, he adjusted my compensation through proper channels.
But yes.
Essentially. She closed her eyes. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. If I'd known. You couldn't have known. He's very good at hiding things. Not anymore, she said quietly. Not from us. The first mediation session was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I arrived early, setting up our materials in the conference room. Lauren sat beside me, composed but tense. Mark walked in at exactly 9 o'clock, his attorney following. He wore an expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, his expression confident. He was talking about a golf game, laughing, completely at ease. Then he saw me. The transformation was instant. His smile collapsed. Color drained from his face. He actually stopped walking, frozen in the doorway. Mark, his attorney prompted. I stood, extending my hand across the table. Mr. Talbot.
I'm Anna Walker.
Counsel for Mrs. Talbot. I don't believe we've been formally introduced in this capacity. His hand was cold when he shook mine. His eyes searched my face, confused, calculating, afraid. You're, he started. Mrs. Talbot's attorney, yes. Shall we begin? For the next hour, Mark struggled to focus. He kept glancing at me, trying to understand how this had happened, what I knew, what I planned to do. His attorney ran the session while Mark fumbled through responses, distracted and uncertain. At one point, when his attorney stepped out to take a call, Mark leaned forward. Anna, listen. Whatever you think you know, I'm not here to discuss our previous professional relationship, I said calmly. I'm here to represent my client's interests. Nothing more. Lauren watched this exchange silently. When Mark's attorney returned, she squeezed my hand under the table. We left that session with temporary support orders in our favor. As we walked to the elevator, Lauren said, that look on his face when he saw you. That was the first time I've seen him scared in 20 years. Mark didn't take defeat well. Within days, he began a campaign to have me removed from the case. He sent emails to Victoria claiming I had conflicts of interest, that my previous employment created bias, that I couldn't possibly represent Lauren fairly. Victoria forwarded each one to me with a single word: nonsense. He tried going around her, filing a formal complaint with the state bar, alleging I was using confidential information from my time at his firm. It was baseless, desperate, but for 3 days I was terrified it might work. Then Victoria sat me down in her office. The bar reviewed his complaint. There's no merit. All our evidence was obtained legally, through discovery. You worked in marketing, not his
personal accounts.
There's no violation here. He's trying to scare me off the case. Of course he is. Because you're doing your job well. She leaned back, studying me. Anna, I need to ask. Can you handle this? Not legally, I know you can. But emotionally. This man
hurt you.
That's clear. I can handle it. You're sure? I thought about Lauren, about the fear in her eyes when she'd first come to my office.
About
every person Mark had manipulated, dismissed, destroyed because he thought he was untouchable. I'm sure. Victoria nodded. Then let's bury him. Discovery was a beautiful thing. We subpoenaed everything. Bank records, credit card, statements, phone logs, emails. Mark's attorney tried to block it, claiming privacy concerns, but the judge sided with us. When the documents arrived, we spent 2 weeks going through them. Lauren and I sat in the conference room with highlighters and spreadsheets, connecting dots, building a timeline. Look at this, Lauren said, pointing to a hotel charge. This was our anniversary. He told me he had a business conference in Seattle. He was 40 miles away with her. We found hidden accounts, credit cards Lauren didn't know existed, a apartment lease in Vanessa's name that Mark had co-signed for, gifts, trips, a whole second life funded by marital assets. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday. I presented our findings methodically, walking the judge through each piece of evidence. Mark's attorney objected repeatedly, but the documentation was ironclad. Your Honor, I said, holding up a thick binder. The respondent has systematically hidden marital assets, diverted funds for personal use, and attempted to conceal his financial misconduct through deliberate misrepresentation. We're requesting full disclosure and interim support while this matter is resolved. The judge reviewed our evidence. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pages
turning.
Finally, she looked up at Mark. Mr. Talbot, these allegations are serious. Do you have a response? Mark's attorney stood. Your Honor, we dispute these characterizations. My client's business expenses are documented as personal expenditures, the judge interrupted. I've reviewed the evidence. This is concerning. She turned to me. Motion granted. Mr. Talbot will provide complete financial disclosure within 30 days. Interim support is awarded to Mrs. Talbot as requested. Behind me, Lauren exhaled shakily. Beside us, Mark sat rigid, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. We'd won the first battle. The story broke 3 weeks later. A financial journalist covering corporate fraud cases noticed Mark's name in court filings. She started digging, connected him to his firm, found the pattern of expense abuse. The article ran on a Friday morning. Executive used company funds for extramarital affair. It detailed everything. The hidden expenses, the manipulated budgets, the affair itself. Mark's photo was prominently featured. By noon, it had been shared across social media. By evening, Mark was suspended from his firm pending investigation. Lauren called me from her car. Have you seen it? Yes. His phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters, colleagues, people from the firm. Everyone knows now. How do you feel about that? She was quiet for a moment. Vindicated. Terrified.
Sad.
All of it at once. Another pause. Anna, thank you. I know this has been complicated for you too. It's my job. It's more than that. You didn't have to take this case. But you did. That means something. After we hung up, I sat in my office watching the sunset through the window. Victoria stopped by with coffee. You okay? I think so. Big day. Yes. She left me alone. I thought about Mark, about how untouchable he'd seemed when I worked for him. How certain he'd been that consequences were for other people. Not anymore. The divorce proceedings accelerated after the article. Mark's attorney pushed for settlement, clearly wanting to resolve things quietly before more damage was done. But Lauren wasn't interested in quiet anymore. I spent 20 years being quiet, she told me. making excuses for him, covering his mistakes, pretending everything was fine. I'm done with quiet. We went to court. The judge reviewed the complete financial disclosure, or rather, what Mark finally provided after repeated court orders. Hidden accounts in his name, investments Lauren had never known about, money he'd siphoned away for years. This is financial abuse, the judge said bluntly. Systematic and deliberate. Mark's attorney tried to argue that his client had always intended to disclose these assets, that it was an oversight, not deception. The judge wasn't buying it. Lauren was awarded primary control of all marital assets pending final division. Mark was ordered to pay substantial temporary support, and his attorney's stunned expression suggested this wasn't the outcome they'd expected. In the hallway after the hearing, we encountered Vanessa. She was leaving Mark's attorney's office, her own lawyer beside her. Apparently, she'd been called to testify about the gifts she'd received. She saw Lauren and looked away quickly, ashamed. Lauren just walked past, head high, dignified. Mark tried one final stunt the following week. He filed a complaint directly against me, claiming I'd breached confidentiality by using internal documents from my time at his firm. It was his last desperate move, an attempt to discredit me and, by extension, damage Lauren's case. For 48 hours, I was genuinely terrified. A successful ethics complaint could end my career before it really began. I'd worked so hard, sacrificed so much. The thought of losing everything because of Mark again was unbearable. Victoria called an emergency meeting with our managing partners. They reviewed every piece of evidence we'd used, traced every document's origin. All of it had come through proper legal discovery. Nothing from my previous employment had been used. His complaint is baseless, Victoria said, but we need to respond formally. Anna, write a detailed rebuttal. Document everything. I spent the weekend compiling my response. Every source, every document, every legal basis for our evidence. When I finished, it was 20 pages long and absolutely airtight. The Bar Association reviewed it and dismissed Mark's complaint within a week. His attorney received a warning letter about filing frivolous ethics complaints. The complaint had backfired. Instead of hurting me, it had given us grounds to request sanctions against Mark for attempting to intimidate opposing counsel. The judge was not pleased. The final hearing was scheduled for a cold morning in November. I'd been working toward this moment for 8 months. Lauren and I arrived early, prepared for anything. Mark looked different. Smaller somehow. His expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, the exhaustion in his eyes. His career was destroyed, his reputation ruined, his personal life in shambles. Vanessa had left him weeks earlier, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. The judge reviewed the complete case file. Financial misconduct confirmed. Hidden assets disclosed. Pattern of deception established. Mr. Talbot, she said, her voice firm, your behavior throughout this marriage and during these proceedings has been reprehensible. You have systematically abused your position of financial control, deceived your spouse, and attempted to manipulate these proceedings through intimidation and false complaints. She outlined the final order. Lauren received the house, primary control of retirement, accounts, and substantial spousal support. Mark was ordered to pay all legal fees and make restitution for the hidden funds. It was complete vindication. As we left the courtroom, Mark stood in the hallway, his attorney packing up nearby.
He saw
Lauren and started toward her. Lauren, please. We can still fix this. The house, the money, none of it matters. Just talk to me. His voice cracked. He was actually crying. Lauren looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked past without a word. I followed her, my hand steady, my heart calm. Outside, the cold air felt clean and sharp. Lauren hugged me on the courthouse steps, tears streaming down her face. You saved me. I don't know how to thank you. You saved yourself, I said. I just helped with the paperwork. She laughed, wiping her eyes. Anna, there's something I need to tell you. When you Mentioned you'd worked for Mark. I looked you up. I found old company newsletters with your name. I read between the lines. She paused. I know he hurt you too. I know this case was personal. I started to deny it, then stopped. What was the point of pretending? Yes, I said simply. It was personal. Then this was meant to be, she said firmly. You understand what he is. That mattered.
It
Made all the difference. We stood there in the cold, two women who'd survived the same man's cruelty, who'd found each other through impossible circumstance. What will you do now? I asked. Live, she said. Actually live. I'm 60-2 years old, and I've spent 40 years being who he wanted me to be. I want to find out who I actually am. That sounds like a good plan. She squeezed my hands. And you? Are you okay? Really? I thought about it. Was I okay? The anger that had driven me through law school, through this case was fading. What was left underneath? I think I will be, I said honestly. 6 months later, I received a postcard. No return address, just a photo of a beach at sunset. And a brief note in Lauren's handwriting. Started painting. Terrible at it, but I'm having fun. Hope you're well. Thank you for giving me my life back. I pinned it to the corkboard in my office, next to my bar admission certificate and a photo of my sister's wedding that I'd finally gotten to see in pictures. One Saturday afternoon, I found myself walking past my old office building. I hadn't been back since I'd quit. The directory in the lobby had been updated. Mark's name was gone. I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the windows where I'd once worked, where I'd felt so small, so powerless, so certain I'd never amount to anything because someone told me I wasn't good enough. A younger woman hurried past me toward the entrance, carrying coffee and looking stressed, rushed, overwhelmed. I almost stopped her, almost warned her. But she wouldn't have believed me. I wouldn't have believed me back then either. Some lessons you can only learn the hard way. I walked back to my car. My phone buzzed with a message from Victoria about a new case, a woman whose husband had hidden assets in offshore accounts. Could I take the consultation? On Monday? I texted back. Yes. The work continued. The work mattered. And somewhere along the way in the courtrooms and conference rooms and late nights reviewing evidence, I'd become the person I'd always wanted to be. He once decided what I was worth. Now I decide that for myself.